Listen to the audiobook, Tess of the D'Urbervilles, by Thomas Hardy, Level B2, Iwa Reading Club, Part 1.
On a fine evening at the end of May, a man was walking through the valley of Blakemore toward the village of Marlotte. He was drunk and barely dragged his feet along. On his way, he encountered an elderly priest and lowered his head in a polite greeting. "Good evening, Sir John," replied the priest. The man stopped sharply and stared at him in confusion. "Why did you address me like that?" he inquired. "I am no sir. I am John Durbeyfield, a simple countryman." The priest hesitated a moment and then asked, "What is it that you know of your origin?" "I'm a historian. Recently, I decided to dig more into the royal bloodline and made a curious discovery. Do you know that your ancestors were none other than the honored D'Urbervilles, the ancient family of lords?" "No, I haven't ever heard of that," cried John Durbeyfield. "And where lies our land and wealth, dare I ask?" "You don't possess any," replied the priest with regret. "Your family has died a noble death. Now, it is only of interest to historians." He excused himself and took his leave. Durbeyfield stood there, overtaken by pride. He was a man of noble origin. He stopped a carriage on the road and rode home like a lord. He passed a small field where all the young girls from the neighborhood had gathered for the annual May Day dance. One of them spotted the carriage on the road and laughed. "Look, Tess, your father is drunk out of his mind." Another girl raised her head and cast a brief look at the road. "He's just tired," she whispered, and turned away sharply, burning with shame. Soon the dance began. Since the girls had no partners, they danced with each other. Then they noticed 3 finely dressed young men approaching the field. The girls demanded they join in the dance. The youngest of the 3 fished a girl from the crowd, and they danced the entire evening. As he was leaving, he noticed a lonely girl watching him sadly from a distance. She looked elegant and sophisticated, and he regretted at once that he hadn't danced with her. 2. Back at home, Tess found her mother bent over a washing tub, same as she had left her. The woman was surrounded by a bunch of younger children. She had to do all the household chores herself because the family could not afford a servant. She finally noticed Tess and cried excitedly. "You won't believe the news. It turned out that we belong to an ancient noble family, and our actual name is D'Urberville." That's why father was acting so strangely, figured Tess. But where is he now? Suddenly, her mother turned serious. "He went to Shaston for a doctor's examination," she replied. "It turns out that his heart has gotten so bad that it will never recover. The news shocked him so much that he went to the bar to have a drink." As she listened to her mother, Tess's eyes gradually filled with tears. "He went to the bar and you never forbade him?" she cried desperately. But she knew her mother very much approved of her husband's drinking. In fact, she never minded going for a drink herself, to forget about her tough life, for at least a short while. She went to pick up her husband, and Tess was left alone with 6 children to nurse. At midnight, Tess's mother entered the bedroom where she was sleeping with her brothers and sisters. "It's nearly time to set off if we want to deliver our beehives to the market on time," she whispered. but your father can't go. I will ask one of those boys you danced with." Tess was now thoroughly awake. She would never let anyone know that her father was incapable of working because he had drunk himself unconscious. "I'll deliver them myself," she resolved instantly. "Only I'll take Abraham with me." She woke up her 9-year-old brother, and they went to load the carriage together. Then they mounted it and set off. "Isn't it great to be noble?" asked Abraham as they rode. "You're going to marry a wealthy gentleman." Tess looked at him in confusion, and the boy explained. "They say that some Mrs. d'Urberville of Trantridge will set you up with a decent man." "There is no Mrs. d'Urberville," Tess interrupted him, and they rode on in silence. After a while he spoke again. "You once told me that there were other worlds in the stars. Are they the same as ours?" "Think of them as apples in our garden," replied Tess. "Some of them are good, others are spoiled." "Is ours a good one or a spoiled one?" "A spoiled one." Gradually the boy fell asleep, and Tess took charge of the horse. Then sleep overcame her too. She woke up to a sudden crash and sprang off the carriage to see what had happened. It turned out that a post carriage had struck theirs and harmed their only horse. The postman promised to send someone to their rescue and left. Tess just stared at the dying horse, blind with tears. "It's my fault," she thought. "We cannot work without a horse to carry our loads. I have ruined our entire family." At daybreak, a man came to pick them up and drive them home. Tess told the unfortunate news to her parents, but they never blamed her. Nobody could have blamed her as much as she blamed herself. 3. After losing their horse, the family struggled to make ends meet. Tess blamed it all entirely on herself. One day, her mother proposed that Tess meet Mrs. d'Urberville and ask for her support. After all, she was their apparent relative. At heart, Tess was unwilling to do it, but she thought it her moral obligation to help her family out of the tough situation. The following day, she went to Trantridge. She approached the massive gate and stood still. A young man in the garden spotted her from a distance and walked up to her, surveying her up and down with approval. Somehow, Tess felt very uncomfortable in his presence. The look in his eyes suggested great force and violence. "What are you seeking here, my beauty?" he asked, and curved his mouth into an ugly smile. "I am Mr. Alec d'Urberville." I have come to appeal to your mother, sir," whispered Tess, trying to justify herself. "My family are of the d'Urbervilles, too. We are in a tough financial situation now. I have come to seek your support." "It's a pity my mother cannot receive you now due to her poor health. I shall see if she can aid you in any way," said the man. "But now, let me show you around the garden, my prettiest cousin." Tess wanted to take her leave immediately, but the man wouldn't permit her. She was relieved when Alec finally let her go. Back at home, she told her mother about her new unpleasant acquaintance, and the woman decided with a certain satisfaction that Alec wanted to marry Tess. The following afternoon, the Derbyfields received a letter from Mrs. d'Urberville. She offered Tess a position at her chicken farm. "Surely, Mr. d'Urberville is going to make you a decent lady, Tess," cried her mother. She was delighted at the prospect of marrying her daughter off to a wealthy man. On the appointed day, Mrs. Derbyfield accompanied her daughter to the spot where Mrs. d'Urberville's servant was to pick her up. Instead, a fashionably dressed young man was waiting for her in the distance. The girl went toward him unwillingly and stopped by his side. The man grabbed her by the arm and basically pushed her into his carriage. As they were riding away, Mrs. Durbeyfield first doubted whether her decision had been wise. "4. Alec was rushing along the road and Tess grew anxious. As she spotted a steep slope ahead, she asked, attempting not to sound too concerned, "You will go down slowly, I assume?" "I never drive slowly," he replied with a laugh. "Why? If you hold me by my waist, you'll feel more secure." Tess didn't want to embrace him like that, but was too terrified to resist. She put her arms around him, and they rode on. "Slow down, please," she begged in a desperate tone. "I will, but only if you grant me a kiss," replied Alec. He leaned toward her and kissed her on the cheek. Burning with shame, the girl took her handkerchief and rubbed her face. The moment was rather unconscious, but Alec regarded it as an offense. "You are fairly sensitive for a country girl," he remarked. Tess didn't say anything in response. "I will be so kind as to forgive you if you give me another kiss," said Alec, and slowed his pace before another slope. Tess sprang off the carriage. "I'd rather walk, sir," she said. Tess started working at Mrs. d'Urberville's. She was surprised to find out that the woman was blind. Overall, she was satisfied with her new position. Aside from Alec's romantic advances, nothing disturbed her. Every Saturday, the workers from the surrounding households went into town to dance and drink. Tess attended the events too. Usually, she walked back with her friends. But one day, they were too drunk to walk the long distance, and Tess left the venue alone. She spotted Alec at the door and realized that he had been pursuing her all the way. He offered to give her a ride home, and she accepted after a moment's hesitation. The carriage moved slowly through the pitch-black night. After a while, it struck Tess that they had been riding far longer than usual. She realized that they had left the main road and were approaching a dark forest. Slowly, a cloud of white fog surrounded them. "Where are we headed?" she inquired in a whisper. "I knew I shouldn't have trusted you." "To the forest," replied Alec with confidence. "By the way, I have purchased a new horse for your father today. Aren't you a bit more in love with me now, my beauty?" "I thank you sincerely, but I don't think I'm—" She felt tears streaming down her cheeks. "No need to cry now, dear," he comforted her and stopped the carriage. He made a bed in the fallen leaves and urged her to rest there while he went to bring a light. When he returned, Tess was asleep. He leaned over her and pressed his cheek against hers. There, in the absolute darkness and silence of the forest, he took advantage of her, and not a single soul was around to defend her innocence. A few weeks later, Tess was walking through the Blakemore Valley toward the village of Marlotte. She thought the familiar landscape would comfort her, but somehow it seemed terribly plain. Soon, Alec's carriage caught up with her. He leaned over to her and asked, "Why'd you slip away, my beauty? Get on the carriage and drive back with me." "I'll never go back," she replied firmly. "Then let me give you a ride to the village," he said. They drove on in silence, Tess lost in thought. As they approached the village, Tess started crying. "If I loved you, I wouldn't blame myself for my weakness." "Truly, I owe you an apology," replied the man. "I guess I'm just spoiled to the core, but trust me, I will never harm you again. Know that should you ever be in need of anything, you can always rely on me." Tess went to her family's house. Her mother was surprised to see her. Tess threw herself into her arms and told her everything, crying bitterly. Her mother listened to her patiently, then said, "You should have made him marry you. Thus you would have done good for the family, but you only thought of your own self. Or, if you weren't willing to marry him, you should have been more cautious." "Why didn't you warn me against the danger of men's nature, Mother?" cried Tess desperately. "How was I to know? I was only a child." "Now we are to make the best of it," said the woman in a comforting tone. "We cannot alter human nature." Tess grew more depressed by the day. She woke up in the morning with a strong desire to kill herself. She knew that she didn't deserve anybody's help or sympathy. "5. The harvest season began in August. Among the villagers who went out into the fields was a girl who had nothing remarkable about her. She worked hard and tried not to look anyone in the face. She was Tess Derbyfield, or rather, a plain and hollow version of her former self. At midday, her brothers and sisters appeared over the hill and came running toward her. The eldest was carrying a baby wrapped in cloth. Tess took the baby, lowered herself to the ground, her face turned somewhat away from her fellow villagers, and started feeding it. She didn't seem too enthusiastic at first. After a while, however, she bent down to the baby and kissed its little face a dozen times. At night, Tess returned home to find that her little son was severely ill. No matter what she did, his fever wouldn't go away. Soon it became evident that she couldn't cure him. He was dying. She grabbed the baby and rushed to the bedroom in a desperate attempt to at least rescue his soul from the flames of hell. She woke up her younger brothers and sisters and lined them up around her son. She poured water into a bowl and splashed some over his little body. Her face lit up with enthusiasm and faith as she spoke. "I baptize you, sorrow, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Ghost." Then she put her hand in the water and drew a cross upon him with her finger. The boy's struggle didn't last long. At the break of day, he took his last breath. Tess remained perfectly calm since she didn't have to worry about her son's soul in the afterlife. She carried his body to the churchyard and asked if the priest could bury him. Moved by the girl's emotion, the priest forgot about the strict rules for a brief moment.
Stay with us for part 2.
Send this video to a friend who likes simple podcasts for language learning. And now, check this amazing story.